They say your partner knows exactly where to hit you, not with fists, but with lies. My name is Matthew Wilson. I'm a pediatric nurse. And for 7 years, I thought I had a solid, loving marriage. Until one day, my wife looked me in the eye and told her friends I was abusive, then her family, then mine. Suddenly, I was the villain in a story I didn't even know was being written. People stopped answering my calls. My father-in-law left me a voicemail calling me a sick little coward. Even my workplace got an anonymous report saying I was a danger to children. All of this because my wife was cheating and she needed a cover story. But what she didn't know was that I had cameras, small legal hidden in plain sight, recording everything. The planning, the lies, even the man she snuck into our home while I worked the night shift. I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to burn the entire mask she wore down to ashes. So if you've ever been falsely accused, if someone twisted the truth to destroy you, then this story is for you. Stick around because what happens next will make you question every sweet smile hiding a secret. And if you've ever been betrayed like I was, leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe to Revenge with Chris. Before everything fell apart, my life was quiet, not perfect, but good. I worked nights at a children's hospital in Minneapolis, pulling long shifts, helping kids through fevers, asthma attacks, and broken arms. It was emotionally draining. Yes, but it gave me purpose. I loved being the calm in the middle of a storm, especially for children who didn't understand what was happening to their little bodies. When I came home, I had Rebecca. We met at a blood drive of all places. She had this easy laugh that made everything feel lighter. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and for the first few years, it was just simple domestic peace. Cooking together, Sunday morning pancakes, trips to Lake Superior in the fall to watch the leaves change. Rebecca worked as a freelance graphic designer from home. She had flexibility, I had structure. We balanced each other out, or at least that's what I believed. We never had kids, not because we didn't want to. We actually tried for years. But after a series of miscarriages, we both stopped bringing it up. I thought it had brought us closer. In hindsight, maybe it broke her in ways I didn't see. The cracks started small. She began spending more time on her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't show me. At first, I didn't want to be the paranoid husband, I told myself. Maybe she just needs space. But then came the passwords. She locked me out of our shared computer, saying it was for client privacy. She took calls behind closed doors. Whenever I asked who she was texting, she'd snap, "Do you not trust me?" That question stuck with me. Did I? I wanted to, but something felt off. It wasn't just the secrecy. It was the way she started rewriting history, turning small misunderstandings into dramatic retellings. One night I forgot to take the trash out. The next day she told her friend over the phone. He screamed at me, threw a tantrum like a child. I was sitting right there in the next room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even argue. But she said it so convincingly, I almost doubted my own memory. It got worse. She began provoking arguments over nothing, then storming out for hours, claiming she was going to cool off at her sister's. Only her sister lived 40 minutes away and didn't pick up the phone when I tried to check in. Eventually, I stopped asking questions. I thought maybe this is what long-term marriage feels like. Maybe people grow apart. Maybe I'm overreacting, but deep down, I knew something was changing, and it wasn't just our routine. It was the way she looked at me, like I was no longer her partner, but a character in a script she was writing, one I didn't know I was in. Still, I tried. I cooked her favorite meals. I picked up extra shifts so she could rest. And every time she came home late, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But when the people around me, the ones who once hugged me, laughed with me, shared Sunday dinners with me, started pulling away without explanation, that's when I realized Rebecca wasn't just cheating in private. She was building a stage, a narrative, a lie so big she needed an entire audience to believe it, and I was about to become the villain in a story I didn't write. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about being manipulated. You don't see the strings until you're tangled in them. One by one, the people in our life began treating me differently. It started with Rebecca's sister, Jenna. We used to text memes back and forth. Random grocery finds, inside jokes from our vacation to Colorado. Then radio silence. I texted her one afternoon. "Hey, hope you're good. Haven't seen you guys in a while." She replied 3 hours later. Yeah, just been busy. Hope everything's okay with you two. With you too. The way she said it made my stomach turn. Next was my friend Jeremy, my best man at our wedding. He stopped dropping by for football games, I called him, and he made some excuse about not wanting to get in the middle of anything, the middle of what I had no idea. But it was spreading like smoke in a room I couldn't even see was burning. Then came the family barbecue. It was a casual afternoon in July. Burgers, lawn chairs, cousins chasing each other with water guns. Rebecca wasn't with me. She'd taken off that morning after a fabricated argument about me not supporting her enough emotionally. She said she needed time and would be at her sister's again. So when I saw Jenna at the barbecue, I approached her carefully. Hey, I said, thanks for taking Rebecca in lately. I know she's been going through a lot. Jenna blinked at me. What do you mean? I hesitated. I mean, she's been staying with you after our fights. That's when Jenna's face changed. She looked confused, then uncomfortable, Matt. I haven't seen her in months. That one sentence hit me harder than any punch. It knocked the wind out of me. I didn't confront Rebecca right away. I waited until she came home that night, pretending everything was normal. She even brought home Thai food, like nothing had happened. I asked her, how's your sister? She didn't flinch. Good, we watch movies all day. I nodded. She told me she hasn't seen you in months. Silence. Then it started. The performance. Rebecca's eyes welled up. Her voice shook. You're spying on me now. You're interrogating me like I'm a criminal. I just want the truth, Rebecca. You want control. That's what this is. You want to trap me. Gaslight me. She grabbed her keys and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, frozen. It wasn't just the lie. It was how convincing her reaction was. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed her. That's when it hit me. If she could do that to me, she could do it to anyone, and she did. The calls started pouring in. A coworker cornered me in the break room, whispering, hey man, everything okay at home? Someone said, you've been yelling at her a lot. My cousin unfollowed me on social media. One of my former professors sent me an email titled, Concerned, then came the voicemail. Rebecca's father. His voice was shaking with rage. If I hear you've laid a single hand on my daughter, I swear to God. Matthew, I will end you myself. I dropped the phone. My hands were shaking. She'd told them I was abusive. She hadn't just built a story, she'd cast herself as the victim and me as the monster. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't as naive as I used to be. In my years working with children and families, I'd seen how false abuse accusations could destroy lives. I'd seen how manipulators weaponize sympathy. I knew the patterns, the setups, the escalation. And months before things reached this point, I'd already started preparing tiny cameras legally installed in the kitchen living room, hallway, not in private areas, just the shared spaces. Enough to see who was really doing what I'd captured every performance, every fake fight, every time she rehearsed her crying voice before a phone call, every moment she laughed on the phone with someone she called babe. In my house, while I was at work, while I was feeding sick children soup at 3 a.m., so while Rebecca built a narrative, I built a case. She thought she was 2 steps ahead, but she had no idea I was already watching. I thought the worst had already happened. I thought being called abusive behind my back, losing friends, being alienated from my own family. I thought that was rock bottom. I was wrong. The real bottom came with a knock on my apartment door. 2 plainclothes officers, calm, cold Mr. Wilson. We've had an anonymous report alleging domestic abuse. I stood there in silence. I knew this moment might come, but when it actually did, my knees still buckled. I've never laid a hand on her. I said quietly. One officer nodded almost like he'd heard it 1,000 times before. We're just doing our job, sir. Mind if we come in? They asked questions, took notes. Wanted to know if I had any weapons in the house, if I'd ever raised my voice, if I'd ever made her feel afraid. The irony burned in my chest like acid. Rebecca, the woman I used to hold through panic attacks. The woman I defended in every family argument. She was now claiming to be the one who needed protection from me. The next morning I was suspended from work pending an investigation. My badge, my ID, and my access card were taken. No one looked me in the eye as I walked out of that hospital, People I'd known for years suddenly avoided me like my presence was toxic. Contagious Rebecca had filed for divorce. And not just any divorce. She claimed she was fleeing an abusive marriage. She submitted evidence too. Old bruises from a hiking accident we had years ago. Screenshots of texts she edited to look like threats. A journal filled with dates and fake incidents like a carefully constructed timeline of abuse. It was disturbing. The detail, the precision, the planning. My lawyer James Cartwright sat across from me in his office flipping through the documents. "She's good," he muttered. "Really good. She's not just lying, she's documenting her lies." He looked up at me. "If we don't have hard proof to counter this, she could take everything. Your house, your savings, your license to practice nursing, your reputation." I didn't flinch. I opened my backpack and handed him a USB drive. "What's this?" he asked, truth. I said about 6 months worth. He plugged it in. I watched his face as the first video played, Rebecca pacing the living room, practicing her crying voice. Then dialing her friend and saying, "If I make it sound scary enough, they'll believe me." He blinked, stunned, then clicked to the next one. "She's laughing with a man in our kitchen, someone I didn't recognize, wearing one of my shirts." He grabs her waist. They kiss. She says, "Don't worry. He's at work. He's always working." Cartwright leaned back, rubbing his temple. This changes everything. For the next 2 weeks, we cataloged everything. We clipped the videos by date, cross-referenced them with her fake journal entries, labeled and time-stamped every lie. We made copies, stored backups, uploaded to encrypted cloud drives. She thought she was untouchable, but her own voice, her own words would undo her. Still, I didn't release anything yet. Not to my family. Not to friends, not even to my workplace. Because if I went nuclear too early, she could spin it, say I was spying, that I was the abuser surveilling her every move. We had to wait for court, and when the date finally arrived, Rebecca strutted into that room like a tragic heroine. Hair curled, eyes puffy, wearing a soft beige sweater, like some kind of Lifetime movie version of a domestic abuse survivor. She looked around the courtroom, scanning for sympathy. Then she looked at me, calm, quiet, still. She smirked, and that's when I knew she thought she'd already won. She had no idea. The truth was about to roll on screen and nothing. Not her tears, not her lies, not her performance could stop it. The courtroom was quiet, too quiet. Rebecca's attorney began with a trembling voice describing her as a courageous woman who had endured emotional manipulation, intimidation, and isolation. She nodded solemnly at every word, dabbing her eyes with a neatly folded tissue. People in the gallery leaned forward, absorbing every syllable. I sat still, expressionless. Because I didn't come to defend myself, I came to end this. When it was our turn, my attorney stood up. "We're prepared to submit video evidence legally obtained from shared areas of the marital home." He said clearly, "These recordings will speak directly to the events described in the plaintiff's allegations." The judge nodded. "Proceed." We dimmed the lights. The first video began. It showed Rebecca in our kitchen, facing her phone like a mirror. She said in a mocking tone, "I just want to feel safe again." Your Honor then burst out laughing. She turned to someone on speakerphone. "Do you think I cried enough? I need to sell this, or he might not settle." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. The next clip, she's on the couch whispering, "He's at work. You can come over. Just park 2 blocks down like last time." Then another, she walks into the living room, sees her reflection and whispers, "Okay, just start yelling. Say he threatened you. Make it believable." The room was silent except for the sound of the playback. Every fake cry, every cruel laugh, every rehearsed scene. Her lawyer turned pale. Rebecca's face twisted, her hand trembling as she clutched her tissue. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Does the plaintiff dispute the authenticity of this footage?" Her attorney stammered. We weren't made aware of." The judge cut him off. "You were made aware of the allegations that opened the door to this response." For the next hour, clip after clip played, Rebecca manipulating conversations, deliberately provoking fights, calling the man she'd been cheating with my real husband. But the worst one, the one that made even the court stenographer stop typing, was the footage from our bedroom hallway. Rebecca stood there in lingerie, kissing the man I'd never met. She looked directly at the hallway mirror and said, "He has no idea, poor Matthew." always at work saving kids while I'm busy ruining him. When the screen finally went dark, no one moved. Rebecca was frozen. No more tears, no more acting. The judge looked over his glasses. This court finds the defendant has provided credible and substantial evidence of perjury, malicious defamation, and fraud, he continued. This is not merely a case of a failed marriage. It's a deliberate attempt to destroy a man's life using the court system as a weapon. He turned to her attorney. I suggest you advise your client to withdraw all claims immediately before I consider referring this case to the district attorney for criminal charges, her lawyer whispered frantically. Rebecca nodded in silence. Tears now fell real ones, but it was too late. The damage was done. She dropped the abuse claims. The court granted the divorce with prejudice, meaning she could never bring those allegations again. I was awarded sole ownership of our home, full protection of all my professional licenses, and a public statement from the court clearing my name, which my lawyer distributed to my hospital and peers. The hospital reinstated me quietly, respectfully. Some colleagues apologized, others stayed distant, but I didn't need them anymore, because the truth had finally stood taller than the lie. Weeks later, I received a letter from one of Rebecca's former friends. She wrote, I believed her. I'm so sorry, watching those videos broke something in me. She fooled us all. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I wasn't chasing revenge for satisfaction. I just wanted the truth to survive. And it did because I planned for it. Because I kept calm. And because I refused to let someone else narrate my story, the truth came out like a slow rising tide. Not loud, but unstoppable. After the court ruled, there was no dramatic applause, no movie-ending cheers, just a long, heavy silence. Rebecca left the courtroom without looking at me. Not once. No apology, no final confrontation, just the sound of her heels echoing down the hallway as she disappeared behind a steel door. And just like that, it was over, except it wasn't. Because even when you win, you don't walk away clean. The next few weeks were a strange kind of quiet. Friends who had ghosted me started crawling back. Some messaged me long paragraphs filled with awkward apologies and excuses. We didn't know the full story. She was just so convincing. I hope you can forgive us. I didn't reply to most. Not out of anger, but because I no longer had space for people who needed proof to trust me. Some of Rebecca's family members wrote too. Her cousin sent flowers with a card that said she manipulated us all. Her father never reached out. I didn't expect him to. But what surprised me most was the grief, not for the marriage that had died long before the court said it was over, but for the version of me I used to be. The Matthew who gave people the benefit of the doubt, who thought being kind was enough, who didn't think he needed to record the woman he loved. That man was gone. In his place stood someone quieter. More cautious, still kind, but no longer naive. I went back to work the following Monday. The nurses greeted me with awkward smiles and soft hugs. The children, thank God, didn't know anything. They just lit up when I walked into the room with silly voices and sticker charts. One parent, a mother of a 3-year-old leukemia patient, touched my arm and said, I don't know what happened, but I'm glad you're still here. That meant more than any court ruling ever could. I spent the next few months rebuilding piece by piece. I sold the house. Not because I had to, but because every room held echoes I didn't want to live with anymore. I moved into a small condo closer to the hospital. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it was quiet. One day I ran into James Cartwright, my lawyer, at a charity dinner for legal aid services. He wasn't alone. He introduced me to a woman named Dana, a family court attorney, sharp eyes, steady voice. She'd been in the gallery the day Rebecca's lies unraveled. I was the one who requested the courtroom camera footage for legal archives, she said with a quiet smile. I've never seen anything like that day. We talked for hours about law justice, pain, about how some people weaponize victimhood, and how others claw their way out from under it. A year later, we were still talking, but that's another story. For now, I'll say this: Rebecca's lies didn't just fall apart. They exploded. She lost most of her friends. Her family stopped taking her calls. Her social media became a graveyard, post after post with 0 likes, 0 comments. She tried moving to another city, started a GoFundMe claiming to be a survivor of narcissistic abuse. But someone leaked the court footage. It went viral on a Reddit thread about false accusations. The comments were brutal. Some said she belonged in prison. Others called her the reason real victims aren't believed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't share the link. I didn't even bookmark it because revenge didn't look like her crying online. Revenge looked like me. Still standing, still working, still trusted. Her lies may have almost destroyed me, but almost doesn't count. And in the end, the truth had receipts. It's been 2 years since that day in court. 2 years since I watched the woman I once vowed to protect fall apart under the weight of her own lies. A lot has changed since then. I still work as a pediatric nurse. I still hold the hands of scared children. I still walk the hospital halls at 3 a.m. with lullabies playing softly on my phone. That part of me never left, but something else grew in its place. Strength, not the loud chest-thumping kind, but the quiet, unshakable kind. The kind that comes from surviving a storm you didn't deserve. I started volunteering with a local legal aid group, sharing my story with others who've been falsely accused, helping them document, prepare, and stay calm under fire. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that facts may take time to rise, but when they do, they burn through lies like sunlight through fog. And yes, Dana and I are still together. It's slow, careful, built on brutal honesty and mutual respect. She knows every scar, every hesitation. She never pushes, she just listens, and sometimes that's all healing needs. So what's the moral simple? When someone weaponizes victimhood, it doesn't just hurt the accused, it hurts real survivors. It casts doubt on the voices that need to be believed. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been lied about, shut out, or turned into a villain by someone you once loved, you are not alone in the truth. It may take time, but it always finds the light. What did you think of this story? Have you ever known someone who twisted the truth to protect themselves? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you believe the truth should never be silenced, don't forget to subscribe to Revenge with Chris for more real justice stories every single day.